With the Mueller probe complete, there are still a number of other investigations involving President Trump and his various business dealings. CBS News Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues reports.
As the special counsel investigation ends, focus will now turn to Lower Manhattan and the office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
Those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at.
For months, Michael Cohen, who was the president's fixer and personal attorney, has been cooperating with prosecutors in New York investigating campaign finance violations, the Trump Organization's finances, and possible illegal foreign donations to the Trump Inaugural Committee. Former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara.
The special counsel's office mission was circumscribed by what Rod Rosenstein, the acting attorney general at the time for purposes of this case, said they could look at. The Southern District folks, they're not circumscribed by anything. They can look at crime as they see fit.
Separately, the New York State Attorney General has issued subpoenas to Deutsche Bank related to the financing of major Trump Organization projects, as well as Mr. Trump's failed effort in 2014 to buy the NFL's Buffalo Bills. And even though the special counsel's investigation has wrapped, Mueller's work moves forward in federal court. The president's former campaign advisor and friend, Roger Stone, faces trial in November on charges related to lying to Congress and witness tampering. There are also half a dozen congressional investigations already underway, and the Mueller report could lead to many more. Jonathan Turley is a CBS News analyst.
Many of these committees were held in abeyance waiting for the completion of the special counsel investigation. Now that it's done, they have a free field to operate.
Over the weekend, House and Senate Democrats sent letters to more than half a dozen federal agencies and the White House counsel's office demanding the preservation of all documents and evidence amassed by Mueller's team. Jeff Pegues, CBS News, Washington.
Let's bring back in Rebecca Roiphe. She's a CBSN legal contributor and former assistant district attorney in the New York County District Attorney's Office. All right, Rebecca, so what impact does the conclusion of the Mueller probe have on these other investigations?
Well, I think those investigations have been proceeding and will continue to proceed. Especially the Southern District of New York investigation into Trump's businesses. I think, there may have been some cooperation between the prosecutors trying to hold things back until Mueller was done. But my guess is that they've been proceeding and looking into these cases and will continue to do so to follow the evidence.
So what about Michael Cohen? He has been working with federal prosecutors in their investigations into the Trump Organization's finances, as well as the potential campaign finance violations. Cohen is scheduled to start this 3-year prison sentence in May. So does that present any kind of problem at all for prosecutors?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he can continue to cooperate while he's in prison.
Have access to him,
yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, we do know from his testimony he's already, given Congress a lot of tips about where to look, and I'm sure that he's given the prosecutors those same tips. So that will continue as long as he has information to share with them.
Well, we mentioned the New York Attorney General's probe into Mr. Trump's business dealings. What specifically is she looking for, and what could that actually mean for the president? He's sitting in office right now, but we're talking about these business dealings. So is there some kind of complication there?
Well, I mean, look, you guys were just talking about how Trump and his team have been celebrating this moment, and they should probably seize the moment while they have it, because there are all these clouds still hanging over him. And, I think that these pose serious threats. I mean, there already has been a determination that he used his foundation like a personal piggy bank. Mm-hmm. That is completely inappropriate, and that was already resolved by the Attorney General's office. So it seems so unlikely that he treats his businesses in a different way, or the inauguration, or any of these investigation units in a different way from how he treats his foundation. So if that continues, they will find that, because as Preet Bharara said, they are not constrained by a particular mandate, and they are just following the evidence where it takes them. So if they subpoena Deutsche Bank and suddenly stumble upon something, they're going to follow that, and they'll charge it if it's a crime.
Is there any way at all to tell what kind of time frame you might be looking at for any of these investigations?
There really isn't. isn't. The only
Okay.
thing that I can say is that these kinds of investigations really take time. People kept saying, like, oh, the Mueller investigation is going on
Almost
and on.
2 years.
But that was short. I mean, I was involved in investigations that have to do with complex financial fraud that took longer than that. Sometimes they can really take a long time because they're so intricate and involved. So, I just think it's impossible to say because you don't really know what they're looking at, how long it could take them to actually figure out, untangle these facts.
I know, obviously, prosecutors, federal prosecutors are professionals. They are used to working under pressure. But does what happened surrounding the Mueller probe with respect to the president attacking the credibility of it, and now post-probe looking to sort of attack the genesis of it, is that something that could perhaps play at all in the minds of these federal prosecutors as they conduct their own investigations?
You know, I think they haven't been immune to these attacks. I think they've had their eye on it, and that they've been trying to preserve the rule of law at the same time as they're keeping their heads down and they're doing their job. That said, I think the Mueller report, whether you like the conclusions or don't like the conclusions, is a victory for these institutions and a victory for the rule of law. And I think that gives, some kind of energy to these other investigations because it was shown, nobody interfered with this investigation. It proceeded, it concluded, and it did so in a professional manner. And I think these other prosecutors have been watching that and will continue to do the same thing.
I mean, have the politics, I guess what I'm wondering, have the politics surrounding the Mueller probe weakened the very institution of the Justice Department and those federal officials who are tasked with investigating these things?
It's such a good question. I think it hasn't weakened them. I think it's strengthened their resolve. I think it has made them keep an eye on not just the work that they do, which is what they always do, but also on their reputation and on the appearance of legitimacy and keeping things in the public eye clean so that people can look at these institutions and have faith in them that they are holding people responsible, all people responsible for the crimes that they commit.
Finally, is it possible to tell at all? There's a lot we don't know about what actually officials have and what they're looking at, but is it possible to tell at all which investigations could potentially be more problematic for the president than others? Is there any way to tell?
I mean, you can speculate about those kinds of things. I think it's impossible to tell.
Yeah.
I think the one thing to remember is that he's not somebody who keeps his hands off. He's very involved. So I think if you find something, you will probably find him connected to those things. I mean, obviously, in terms of this, larger question of collusion with the campaign, there were many of his campaign officials who were engaged in illegal conduct, but there wasn't a conspiracy found that he wasn't a part of. He would have known what was going on and he would have been involved, and that's true of his businesses as well.
All right, Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much, Rebecca.
Sure. Thank you. Anytime.